I thought I'd make a video while it was on my mind about Venus and the South Node. Now, the thing is, Venus is already at 11 degrees of Sagittarius, whereas the South Node is at 2 degrees. Let me, if I've got, if I've got that right by memory here, I can check on my phone. Yes, Venus is at 11 degrees. South Node is at 2 degrees at the time of me recording this video. So Venus has already perfected the conjunction with the South Node, so I'm a little bit late on this one, but I think it's kind of more about just kind of noticing the overall effect of Venus sharing the same sign with the South Node, because even though Venus is more than 10 degrees away or almost 10 degrees away, it's still just in the same vicinity. And Venus is going to be there until basically the end of October. Venus goes into Capricorn in early November. So this general Venus South Node thing is something that's going to be around for a while, and yeah, I've kind of been noticing it in my own life personally. I have a Sagittarius stellium in the second house. And the second house has to do with your belongings and stuff like that. Um, I was a bit disappointed because when I got out of the hospital, I was all excited to make music and stuff like that. And to be honest, one of the things that I was doing while I was sick, I couldn't do very much. Like I was heavily anemic, and I the kind of hobbies that I like to do, like music and astrology and stuff, I just didn't have the energy to do a lot of things. So I was like on the couch, and one of the things that and then I was in the hospital where you can't really do much in the hospital. Anyways, I was kind of just bedridden for a long time. And one of the things that I did just to like sort of like give myself to think something else to think about other than being sick was that I watched a lot of YouTube videos about synthesizers. like there's a whole like there's a whole synthesizer community of people doing like gear reviews and tutorials and stuff like that, and it's one of my interests. Um, I'm a kind of person who likes a lot of different stuff. I don't know if that goes with the whole mutable thing of having strong Sagittarius and Pisces and Jupiter expansive kind of things, but I notice some people they might be into astrology and that's kind of like their whole life becomes astrology. And I was kind of thinking about that earlier this year about like maybe I should just focus all my efforts into being like a really good astrologer. And like I'm not I don't expecting to get any record deals or like anything like that anytime soon. But I mean, to be honest, like in the midst of being really sick, even though I wasn't making music, I wasn't able to make music, being able to just like maybe it's a bit of I don't know, is it escapism? Being able to just like watch videos about synthesizers and electronic music stuff that maybe I'm not even gonna buy this stuff, but it's like it just gave me something to do to like to have fun and enjoy stuff. So, but I was in the background. I was like planning out to buy to like I've got a bit of money in the bank, and once I'm better, I'm gonna start. It was kind of like once you this thing of like having a health crisis where it was actually serious enough that it could have been life threatening at some point in time because I had a pulmonary embolism. Like the doctors were telling me I could just die at any minute or something like this. And it's kind of like, wait, what am I doing? Just having all this, having money, just like store, like why not just buy the synthesizer, buy the stuff that you want? It was kind of like but this materialistic kind of thing maybe, but like to do retail therapy. Why not just spend the money on the thing? You only live once, YOLO, right? And then once I got out of the hospital, well, I haven't made any big purchases because it's been Mercury retrograde, and I've in past experience I know it's not always that's what they say about Mercury retrograde is to hold off on that kind of stuff. Things might not work out or whatever. But with the stuff that I do own already, um, it's kind of funny because yeah, the crossover between music stuff and astrology. I had a module, a Eurorack module that was for sampling that I use quite a bit in my music. And I was going to install a firmware update on it, only to find that I could not get the module to power on. And before I had problems where sometimes I'd have to like switch it on and off to get it going, but it was just like totally dead. And unfortunately, the manufacturer, it's still covered under warranty, and they said that they'll either try to repair it or send me a new one, which is nice because I thought it was just toast, and I just thought I had this expensive piece of music gear that I always use just die on me, and it sucked, and I was kind of bummed out. But this is where I'm getting to is that was kind of like the Venus and the South Node in the second house is that there's the South Node represents a general decrease. It decreases both the bad and the good of whatever is around it. And in this case, like my possessions, my music gear took a hit from this Venus and the South Node transit, or at least that's the astrological correspondence that I could interpret. And and yeah, I mean, I'm waiting. Mercury stations direct tomorrow, and I might get some music gear, but I'm kind of like with this whole Venus and the South Node thing. There's a certain kind of feeling going on with it where I don't know. It kind of feels like maybe I'm using material things as a kind of escapism, or I'm getting a bit wary about this stuff that's kind of like, retail therapy, like shopping addiction, buying things to, after 5 weeks in the hospital, I'm just like this, I'm kind of observing myself, this pattern where I'm just kind of like, I want to go buy stuff to make myself feel better because, well, I mean, to be honest, I had already been trying to abstain from substances this year. I haven't had a drop of alcohol for, I don't know, what is it, like 7 or 8 months or something, like since February. I guess that would be 8 months now. So I'm 8 months, no alcohol. I was also taking a break from smoking weed, although I've kind of went back and indulged a little bit at some point in time when I wasn't fit. But there's all these things where I'm like, with the medical condition that I have, especially when it comes to colitis, they say that alcohol can really aggravate it. So I'm definitely, it helps to reinforce this thing that I'm not going to be using alcohol. I've got rather than just for the sake of being sober, I've also got health reasons not to drink. And I don't know, maybe I don't know about weed, but I just had this basically a blood clot in my lungs. So I don't think smoking's a very good idea either. And I mean, I've also ever since this colitis started, I haven't even been drinking coffee, right? So I'm like, and I've been trying to reduce my sugar. I mean, I'm a student of achutas, but I don't consider myself that much of a one of these clean yogi people. I kind of maybe I might part of me aspires in that direction, but I could see that I have a hard time going all out in being like clean living, clean eating, that kind of stuff. But with my health condition, I'm definitely going more in that direction. But I'm seeing my indulgent side maybe, you know, going towards the music gear. I have to say, in the past, I actually bought a lot of music gear during phases of time when I wasn't drinking because it's amazing how much money, like if you're a habitual consumer of alcohol or cigarettes or marijuana or whatever the case may be, it's amazing how much money you spend on that stuff. And then when you're not spending money on it, you can buy stuff like synthesizers. And so I've got a little, and synthesizers, you don't just, you don't have to just They don't, aside from the fact when they blow up and break on you for no good reason. They generally are things that stick around, and are, investments that you can get use out of many years later. So I feel a little bit better about spending my money on maybe on music equipment rather than drugs and alcohol or crappy fast food. But it's like I'm seeing that like people talk about the self node as kind of like that escapist kind of tendency. I think you could look at it another way though too, is that it might actually be a good transit for downsizing. Um, One of the things that I noticed, like I got sick around the time I moved back in. This house that I'm in now is my family's house. Before I was living on Vancouver Island, renting a room or whatever, and I kind of had like a brought some of my clothes over to Vancouver Island, and then I was living not that far away from where the Value Village in Nanaimo is, and I don't know, I didn't go thrift shopping all the time, but I bought some clothes over the course of time I was there, and then when I moved back here, there was a bunch of clothes I left. I had too much clothes, so I've been working on downsizing and going through all this old stuff and donating things to the thrift stores and finding all this stuff I haven't worn in years, and yeah, just basically going through stuff and clearing things out. And I guess I could probably do that with some other things other than clothes, but um, I think that Venus in the self node, if there's anything good about it, I think there's a certain kind of like letting go quality or kind of detachment where it's like it might be a good time to, yeah, like clear things out, get rid of things. I mean, I'm kind of relating to this personally because it's a second house transit for me. It was all about my belongings and stuff. But depending on what house this lines up for you, you could maybe apply this to other areas of your life. But there's a sense of like of Venusian things being decreased or Venusian things leaving or feeling the absence of Venusian things maybe and then wanting Venusian things. Like another thing that timed up for me was when Venus, oh, the whole time I was in the hospital. I mean, it started off with Venus in Libra, and then the whole time Venus was in Scorpio as in the hospital. One of the things that I've noticed is that it's kind of to change the subject a little bit now, is that the hospital was an interesting experience because with COVID, with the whole lockdown mentality and stuff like that, and maybe my own, weird hermit lifestyle, even when it's not COVID, like it can be really isolating, right? I mean, before I moved back to the mainland, I was in Vancouver Island. I was living with a girlfriend, and I was meeting new people in Nanaimo and stuff like that. But for the longest time, it was like once the coronavirus lockdown hit, it was like it's weird to be living with a partner, but have this circumstance where it's really isolated. Like you're like isolated with another person, where you're not really isolated, but you're kind of like it's still you're not really having that much of a community social connection because all the shows are not happening. People, I don't know, there's still some parties, but you're not really supposed to party during lockdown, and I kind of felt conflicted about that. I mean, that's getting into stuff going on, more like last year or whatever, but now I'm just, here in Ladner, British Columbia, Delta, BC, at my family's house, and it's like, mostly the people I see are just my mom and my sister, and I don't really know a lot of people in town here. I had a friend that I kind of end up having falling outs with people. I had a good friend in town that I ended up having a falling out with, and I might reconnect with him. I don't know. I don't know if that'd be too much stress, but it was interesting being at the hospital because it's like I actually I should say I have Venus in Scorpio, so I was going through a Venus return while I was in the middle of my hospital experience. And it was weird because it was like, even though it's just medical staff, like doctors and nurses and stuff like that, it was like I felt like I was having more of a social experience in the hospital dealing with medical staff than I would in my daily life at home. And I was kind of thinking too that like the 12th house, which rules hospitalization, hospitals and prisons, and this thing of isolation and stuff like that. It's like a hospital, like it's kind of funny because it's like the hospital is actually like less isolating than living at home. I mean, maybe with the coronavirus pandemic, all of our homes become 12 house experiences. I don't know, but my birthday is coming up and I'm headed into a 12th house perfection year. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of like psychologically trying to gear up for a whole 12th house year. I don't know. I've it's just 1 year, I guess. We'll see. Hopefully it's not too bad. Um, but I'm not. Yeah. Um, I think I would. Another thing that I was thinking about the hospital experience is that the Venus and Scorpio thing. I didn't quite get into it in my last video, but Venus and Scorpio. Personally, I think it worked well for this sort of like social or having more exposure to different people. Um, but Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, and it was in mutual reception with Mars and Libra, so it was like getting helped out, but it's like that, like you're getting taken care of. You got you know f- friendly socialization with the hospital staff and stuff, but it's like the circumstance of being stuck in the hospital and being sick is not really a great circumstance, right? And I think that kind of made sense, especially, so with that Scorpio being with like, blood transfusions and getting IVs stuck in you and getting your blood drawn. Like I was getting my blood drawn like every like hour. It seemed like I was constantly getting blood tests. I was constantly, I don't know, like there's all that kind of like very scorpionic stinger, drawing blood, messy things happening, like not the best circumstance. But then Venus is there providing a bit of like, friendly social relief and stuff, and in that mutual reception with Mars, so they're kind of working together, balancing things out. But it's not the most ideal. So to me, it really resonated with the hospital experience. So I thought I'd throw that in there. But in a way, even though Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, in a way that was almost like a bit easier, I found, than like Venus is peregrine in Sagittarius, so it's not like Venus is particularly good or bad in Sagittarius, but it's I don't know, having your South Node with the benefic is not so great because it sort of reduces the benefic part of the benefic. It kind of signals a kind of a loss of that Venusian stuff, and for me, it timed up with my exit out of the hospital into this circumstance that I'm in now, so I can. It makes sense, and as I'm making this video, the moon's in Pisces, and Pisces is square to Sagittarius, of course. So that means Pisces is squaring the nodes. Pisces is on the south bending. So even the moon in Pisces is kind of like right now is amplifying this thing about like letting go or a sense of loss or a sense of emptying out. And the other position, which would be moon in Virgo, would be the north bending. And when the moon's in Virgo, there's more of a kind of a building up. The north bending has this building up, gaining quality that's more like the north node, and the Pisces south bending is more like the south node. And so that's another kind of, and the moon squaring Venus and stuff. That's kind of like playing into the general mood recently, with the moon in Pisces. And of course, we're leading up to the full moon in Aries, which will probably take on a bit of a different quality. But I just thought I'd talked about this whole thing about Venus and the South Node while it's on my mind. Another thing that's interesting about this is that I've been seeing a lot of stuff in the news about supply shortages. Um, I mean, this is before Venus got anywhere near the South Node, but right before I got in the hospital, my computer died on me, and I basically had to get my computer replaced. And I kind of what I ended up doing was it's kind of like a Frankenstein kind of thing where I don't know. I mean, I'm not that much of a tech guy, but I was too messed up to do it myself anyway. So I just took it into a computer shop and got the paid some guys to put one together for me. But um like they were saying like, oh, to like it was going to be like really expensive to get a video card put in there. And so I just took my video card out of my old computer and put it in. Um and I wasn't even paying attention to this stuff, but I found out after that the reason why it was so expensive is that there's been this like huge shortage on video cards where it's like the components, a number of things, like there's a the shortage on the components, the materials to make the chips and stuff like that. There's also the Donald Trump's trade war apparently affected things. And people are scalping video cards and stuff. But apparently, like, yeah, like it's really hard to get a decent video card for your computer. And apparently, I guess it might affect consoles too, because like I've also heard that like nobody can get a PlayStation 5. Like they're complete. It's kind of like the weird, a little bit surreal. Like I don't know, like the consumer capitalism is kind of failing where you can't get stuff right. And I think to me that especially when we're kind of like, it's only October, but like I don't know with Christmas shopping and stuff like that. Um, by the time we get into November, Venus is going to be in Capricorn, but we're going to have our first full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus in Scorpio season. Now, the South Node is going to be like right on the cusp between like Sag and Scorpio. The South Node is going to be it's technically still going to be in Sagittarius when the lunar eclipse happens, but the lunar eclipse is going to happen with the moon near the end part of Scorpio. So it's going to be being eclipsed by the South Node, but the moon's still in the Taurus part. So it's kind of like the crossover into Taurus eclipse season. When we get the next one in Taurus season next spring, it's going to be more of like the nodes are going to be like well in there and stuff. So this is kind of like where, but a lot of people have been talking about Taurus having to do with resources, having to do with economics, having to do with supply chain stuff. And we've got that Saturn Uranus square that's been going on all year long. So we're going to have this lunar eclipse with Uranus in Taurus, and that's going to be one to look out for. Then that's going to be, well, I don't have the actual date in my brain right now, but that's going to be in Scorpio season, so it's the next full moon basically about a month from now. And that I think that also like because this we're talking about the nodes with the eclipses, we're talking about a Venus ruled sign. I think a lot of the kind of stuff that I'm talking about in this video, what's happening now with Venus on the South Node is almost like a precursor towards the eclipse that we're heading into. So the kind of stuff, I mean, I was kind of talking about more personal stuff, but if you can relate to any of this in your own life, I think we can see these themes being highlighted in the next full moon, not the Aries one, but the Taurus full moon lunar eclipse. So I'm doing these videos because I'm trying to get better and more comfortable about recording videos and get off Facebook. So hopefully you got something out of this. This is my astrological thoughts of the day.